Howdy y'all, DJTJ here at RollToWound.com. Today I'll be looking at the Soulblight Gravelords FAQ that just dropped for 3rd edition AOS. So, if you're interested in hearing about those changes, stick around. Alright everybody, I'm here looking at the Soulblight Gravelords FAQ that just dropped for Age of Sigmar 3rd edition. I'm also here remote at the lodge, so you can see some friends behind me. And if the audio or the picture quality is not up to usual standards, I apologize. We're working remote today, doing a little experiment. So let's dig right in to this. I'm going to zoom in a bit. So for those of you that are new to AOS, the FAQs are something that come out at least once a year and more often if a major change is needed. Usually you'll see them around December and the summer when the General's Handbook comes out. Now, the current ones that just dropped on the 2nd of July 2021, they're for the updated 3rd edition AOS. So if you're getting into the game right now or you're new, these are very important and you need to go download them. And I'll have all those links in the description of this video, and it'll take you to the blog post, which I'll link you out to the things we're looking at. All right, so let's dig right in. The very first paragraph just sort of talks about the designer's commentary. There used to be an errata and a designer's commentary, and they've sort of combined them into one document, which makes sense. The other thing too is look at the magenta, words, and that's going to let you know what the recent changes were on the most recent FAQ. So they're not going to see too much magenta on these FAQs currently because a lot of them are wholly new, but as we go through next year and the next, and then you'll start seeing more magenta pop up, and it's easier to search up what were the changes. All right, so we got some questions here, and this: can I use Deathly Invocation battle trait with each of my heroes, or only with one hero? Answer: with each hero. I thought that was the way it was written to me. That was the way I saw it. So this is no surprise. They just sort of clarified it. There is no restriction on the newly dead ability allowing a unit of Deadwalker zombies to go over their starting size. Is this intentional? Yes. With this rule, what they're referring to is the newly dead rule. It's on the zombie war scroll, and this is basically when they do a wound and like on a 2-up, you can if they end up killing a model or slaying an enemy model on a 2-up after the combat's over, they can bring back. And the big question was, well, can they go above starting size? Can they go, what's their cap? I always thought as written that there was no cap, and they have confirmed that. So zombies go kill and just get bigger. All right, does the newly dead ability on the Deadwalker zombies war scroll apply to mortal wounds that are inflicted by the unit? Once again, I thought, and if the answer is yes, and when I read it originally, I didn't even think that was a question for me. So there you go. All right, so here we go. Unquiet Dead. Oh, well, before we get to the Unquiet Dead, well, Unquiet Dead on page 73 in your battle tome. Add the following to the end of the first paragraph. If both players can set up grave sites at the same time, or if one player can set up faction terrain features at the same time as the other player can set up grave sites, they must roll off, and the winner chooses who sets up their faction terrain or grave sites first. So this is just a little clarification on sort of the order of operations and setting things up. The other thing to check in is if you're at a tournament or a GT, make sure you understand how they're going to allow that in grave sites. Usually grave sites is not that big of a deal because they're small, they're just points on a field. But if you have bigger faction terrain, that's something like if you're Bone Tide Nexus for OBR, you're going to have to sort of still check on stuff like that. All right, Endless Legion. All right, Endless Legion. It says change the rule text to, at the end of Battleshock phase, count the number of enemy units that were destroyed during that turn and roll a dice. Adding the number of destroyed enemy units to the roll on a 5-up, you can pick one friendly Soulblight Gravelord summonable Deadwalkers or Soulblight Gravelords summon Death Rider unit in your army that has been destroyed. If you do so, a new replacement unit with half the number of models is set up, wholly within 12 inches of the grave site, 9 inches away from an enemy. This is pretty standard, and I'll scroll over and finish that. Destroyed. Replacement units cannot themselves be replaced. So this rule was basically clarifying, and that was the big part, this last one here, that you can't just continually recycle that unit. You can't have my 40 block of zombies gets destroyed, I roll my 5 up, bring back 20, then in turn that 20 gets destroyed, then they don't go into that pool to bring back 10. I thought that you could just continue to recycle them. That was my original impression, so I'm glad they clarified this. Not, I didn't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think that this is game breaking. I don't think that they should cap it. I guess there's arguments both ways, but you're needing a lot to happen to get that unit back, and I don't imagine in a 4-turn game you're going to get that many units back. You're having to roll a 5 up, but of course you get added by killing units. But there's times when you might not even kill a unit in a turn, and if I'm looking at a game, I think honestly you're lucky if you get 2 units back in a game. That's a pretty good swing. Two replacement units back. So I don't think that this was. I don't think this was what I. It was good. I think it's good they clarified it. I'm just like I think it's a little bit of a nerf, and it wasn't really needed. All right, so we're getting down to a few of the command traits. So on page 78 of the Battle Tome, the command trait Hunter Snare, add the following to the end of the rule. This general does not see any further modifications to this number for being a monster having a wounds characteristic of 5 or more. Hunter Snare is the command trait that allows you to count the model's wound characteristics when determining how much it counts for holding an objective. Basically, the clarification is if you take this command trait, you don't get that number plus 2 to 5 more. It's just that straight number. So if you're like Nagash or something, well, he couldn't take it, but if you're a bigger, like a vampire on Zombie Dragon, you're not getting to count all those wounds plus an additional. It's just their wounds characteristic. Might of the Crimson Keep, change the first sentence to each time the damage inflicted by an attack made with a melee weapon used by a friendly Castelli Dynasty Vampire unit destroys an enemy unit, that friendly unit gains the relative ability below for the rest of the battle. So this is a little bit of a nerf, because the original rule was kind of like you could still get this from a shooting attack like a breath weapon or like mortal wounds or something. Now it is straight close combat or melee. From a rules perspective, it's a nerf. From a fluff perspective, it makes more sense because they're supposed to be more martial oriented, more close combat oriented. So I get it, but just keep that in mind now. All right, battle traits: Cursed Abomination. Delete the second rules paragraph and add the following to the start of the first rules paragraph. Cursed Abomination are unique enhancements. So takes away an extra. This is the Anmangori one. This is the one where you get the monster, the extra monster abilities from that little table of 3 abilities, and you get the first one for free. And the old rule was you'll get the second one if you had a War Scroll battalion. Well, they sort of changed that, obviously, because they changed battalions, and so it takes away an extra uh, cursed abomination. It takes away one of those extra abilities. However, um, you can still get it back if you take a battalion with an enhancement and pick it as one of your enhancements. So you can still get that second one. However, to be quite honest, I was just revisiting that table today when I was reading this rules and going over, and I was like, no, there's too many better enhancements that I would take, even in the core book, as opposed to that table. So I guess the thought is well, if you just have something that isn't a hero, or maybe something that wouldn't be able to cast, take an artifact, maybe you'd want that. But so bottom line is, it's a bit of a nerf, but at the same time, it's who was doing. It wasn't something I was building around anyway. But all right, Next, we're going to spell lores. Delete the sentence that reads, in addition, you can choose or roll for one spell from one of the following tables for each wizard in the Soulblight army. So that's page 84 in your battle tome. And I tell you what, when I read this for the very first time, I freaked out a little bit. I said, hey, so you're telling me that my wizard, my necromancer now, he only gets his one spell and he doesn't get to pick an extra one from the spell lore? And that's basically what this FAQ rule sort of does. However, it's really not, because in the core rules under enhancements, they describe or go over spell lores. So you've already get this in the core rules. What this did to the battle tome was it cleaned up where you didn't get two of those out of it. Because if rules is written without this fix, you could have read the core rules that says, hey, take a spell lore for each of your wizards, take one spell from the spell lore. Then you would go to this page and read, hey, each one gets gets a spell from the lore, so they could actually be double dipping. They took the sentence out. Can't double dip, but you still get your normal spell. Normal restrictions apply. All right, lore of the death mages, lore of the vampires. It needed clarification, I guess, that you including unique units. So they've cleaned that up. I didn't see anything big there. I personally didn't even think that was an issue that needed clarification, but I'm glad it is. All right, Path to Glory. Okay, so here's an honest question, and I'm not trying to be funny. I'm still interested. Who plays Path to Glory or Path to Glory? If you do, how does this change affect you? What do you think about the new Path to Glory rules? I have never played it. I've never even really had a conversation or seen someone playing a Path to Glory. I know locally they're fixing to start one of those campaigns up. I'm very interested in understanding a little bit more about that. So if you've got comments on Path to Glory, what you think, how this FAQ right here change has affected you, let me know, because like I said, I can't really tell you what I think because I've never really played it or even looked that deeply into it. All right, moving on. Alakanash, the Staff of Power, changed the second sentence of the rules. In addition, this model can attempt to cast Arcane Bolt any number of times in the same hero phase, even if another wizard has already attempted to cast the spell in the same phase. Okay, so this is Nagash's staff, and as you know, that he can always cast Arcane Bolt multiple times. That's sort of his newer deal since, for the last year or so. They clarified that you can continue to do that. Nagash can cast Arcane Bolt 8 times. What they did take away, though, was his ability to cast Mystic Shield. So you can't do that. You can't spam Mystic Shield, which is a bummer because Mystic Shield, I think personally, is a little bit better than Arcane Bolt. And to be quite honest too, I kind of like the older Arcane Bolt for Nagash, and I know there's going to be some argument on that, and if there is, please let me know. Do you like the new Arcane Bolt rules for Nagash more or the old one? I kind of like the old one because I felt that he he was he was doing D3 mortals a little bit more, and you were getting that payoff as you went. So if you're like, hey, that guy has 4 wounds, I could just cast the Arcane Bolt until he was dead, and then I might still have 3 casts or maybe even 4 or 5 casts left, and then I could choose other spells or other targets. Now you're having to sort of like bank on, okay, is they're going to catch a mortal wound at the end of this phase? Maybe I get into close combat with them, they can do D3. So I want to say that I sort of like the old way a little bit better. Now, at the same time, this has a little bit more tactical flexibility in ways, meaning I can cast it on several different units, and then now my opponent has to go, ooh, do I want to charge in now, or do I want to, maybe it helps. It's sort of like the mind games you can play with it. But I don't know. I'd rather have the old one. If you don't agree with me, tell me why. Tell me why the new one's better on Nagash specifically. That's what I'm sort of thinking about, and how you use it. All right. Finally, command ability. A queen amongst monsters. Change the first 2 sentences. The rule 2. This model can issue this command at the start of your hero phase. If it does so, pick one enemy unit visible to the model. All right, it's kind of a debuff because the old one was just said board wide. So now it doesn't even really say board wide, it just says visible. So used to, or before this change, you could just say, hey, that one guy hiding in the corner that no one can see, and they would automatically be affected by it. Now you actually have to be able to see those models and things like that. So a little bit of a debuff. And all right, Festering Feast. Change this rule to this model can issue this command at the end of a combat phase. The command can only be received by friendly Soulblight Gravelords units that made any attacks in that phase that destroyed an enemy unit. You can heal up to D6 wounds allocated to that Soulblight Gravelords unit. Took off the last sentence of the War Scroll. This is probably because in the core rules you cannot use the same command ability more than once per phase. So they were just sort of cleaning it up. Once again, this is a really good command ability, and I really like it. It's on the Vengorian Lord, and I really like this command ability in the way it interacts, because I think it's a lifesaver for your big monsters. All right, Belladama and Pack Alpha. Change the final sentence of the rules to until your next phase, that unit is eligible to fight in the combat phase if it is within 6 inches of an enemy unit instead of 3, and it can move an extra 3 when it piles in. Changed it until next hero phase. So I'm not huge on this command ability. It's not bad command ability. It's just like I'm just not super big on it. But it made it better because now it's clarified it lasts to your next hero phase. So that is a good buff, especially if you get double turned, it's going to sit there for a while. All right, Kritz Scurrying Retreat. Change the rule to at the end of your movement phase. If this model has been slain, roll a dice on a 4+. You can set up the model anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from an enemy unit with all wounds allocated to it. Just clean up the wording. I think it was written a little oddly, and it makes sure he comes back at full health. So I was thinking he came back at full health anyway, but they did clarify that. Okay, the White King and White King on Skeletal Steed. Change the first sentence to read, you can use this command ability at the start of the combat phase. Expected. That was what I put in the notes. Just like, okay, thank you, because if not, that rule was unusable previously. Because the on the War Scroll in the book, you'll see it's at the hero phase, which makes no sense. So now it is fixed to the combat phase. All right, we got a pitch battle profile change. And honestly, this right here is probably the biggest change, I'll say, in this FAQ, and the one that I'm most excited about. It replaced the merge profile of Radikur's court with the following individual profiles for each of the units in the court. So basically, this used to be when it first came out with Cursed Cities, you had to take all these units together, and it's like 750 points. Then they eventually said, no, you can take Radicor the Wolf by himself for 150, and then like the rest were like whatever, 650 or 625, whatever it is. And I was just in the middle of sort of doing War Scroll reviews on these guys, and I kept going, man, I wish these were individual units. I wish these were individual units, because I don't want to buy them as a group, but I really like some of the individual ones. Now we get our wish. We can take all these individual, and there's some really good play in these units. Gorslav the Gatekeeper, if you're running zombies, 75 points for bringing back a zombie unit. Really good. He has shrugs. It's just like, if you're running zombies, look at taking Gorslav 100%. Torgius the Chamberlain, if you're taking Radikar, definitely throw him in there, because you're almost getting a CP every turn just because of him. Watch Captain Halgrim. Okay. I mean, at least he's pretty cheap, and if you're running a lot of skeletons, he might be worth looking at. The Night Guard. The Night Guard, a couple interesting things is a men unit 2 and a max of 4. So you can bring 4 of them. They're 95 points each. I'm glad they did that. I'm glad they gave you the option to take them in bigger units than 2, because they needed it. Vargskar. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. The Vargskar. It's now by itself for 115 points. I'm not griping about that price point. I would love it to be a little bit cheaper, but I think you're going to see a couple of these on the board, because for 100 points, you can sort of add it in. and it can do its own work on the side, as a flank, as something that's going to run around and sort of do its own thing, or maybe just like support one of your sort of heroes, like Radikar the Beast or something, and one of these guys run around on the side, because they got a little bit of wound output, they got a little bit of synergy with some of the stuff in the book. So really like that unit. Of Vicross Bloodborne, minimum units 3, max units 6. I really love. I wish they'd have made the the units a little bit bigger, because I just really want to run them as vampire infantry. Um, they are a super glass cannon. They can put out some wounds. They have some high volume quality attacks, and I guarantee for 125 points, there's going to be people that's running them. Just because they're like, hey, I wanted to go delete that unit. Click, double click on those guys, send them over there. They're pretty much going to kill small chaff units all day. Now, are they survivable? Not that much. They're pretty much a glass cannon. But definitely, when you're list building, there's something that you need to look at. And I think you can kit bash these. These would be interesting what people do to bring them, because currently there's no blister. You have to buy Curse City for them. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see what people do with those. And there you got it. We got some changes. We got some updates. So as I'm making these War Scroll reviews and we're going through this, I'm learning new things. We're seeing new tactics evolve. But I'm glad that they've put this out, and GW did a fantastic job on having these ready day one of release, so we could start digging into how has this new edition changed everything for us. So let me know what you think about this FAQ. What did you like that they fixed? What did you like that they didn't fix? What did they need? What did they forget about? Like, is there something in the book that we see that, hey, this needs to be corrected? I think they did a pretty good job with smoothing things out in general. Like I said, the biggest highlight for me right here is these pitch battle profiles. So with all that said, thanks for watching, and y'all be good.